Welcome to Fam Church Online. My name is Claire, and I'm so glad that you're tuning in with us this morning. We would love to connect with you, and if we haven't had the chance to do so yet, please text WELCOME to the number that appears here at the bottom of the screen. We'll send a digital connection card to your phone. You can fill that out and send it back to us, and we'll send you a gift in the mail just for connecting with us. As always, we hope Pastor John's message really speaks to your heart this morning, and if you would love to connect with people in our community, you can do so down below in the comments.
Thanks, Fam Church, for staying so faithful in your giving. Remember, here at Fam Church, there are 4 ways that you can give. You can give through our app, you can give through our website, you can text your amount, or you can mail it via snail mail. However you decide to give, I want to thank you once again for staying faithful in your giving. It's helping us do ministry, and we're eternally grateful. Thank you. God bless. Good morning, everybody. So good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hope this video finds you well. Well, I got a couple of announcements because we got to get right into this thing because I got a lot to talk about today, so hang in there, right? You know, the last few weeks I've been telling you that we were going to make a change at the end of October. Well, I'll be honest with you. We studied and thought, you know, what can we do to make things different, try to get away from this, because we knew that things were changing here at the church. You know, we're trying to get back to normal and all of that's going on. And boy, we really just been trying to think. And I just could never get peace within myself about what steps we needed to take. And I know that there's still a lot of you out there who are watching and who are faithful to watch, and you belong to Fam Church, but yet you're still not ready to come back. And I just could not get peace within myself to just shut this thing down and try to find a new way of reaching out to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up. And I don't mind admitting, listen, when I ain't right, you know. And it did not feel right. And if it doesn't feel right in me, I'm not going to do it. I have to have the inward witness of the Spirit on the inside of me that is going to testify that what I'm doing is the right thing, or I'm not going to do it. That's just simply the way I roll. I am not going to do it. If it doesn't feel right, if I'm not 100% balled in on it, I'm just not going to do it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to keep this rolling, at least through October, probably change up how we're doing it as far as the backdrop and things like that, because again, this is it's not about me, but it is about me because I'm the one who's here. And if I'm not excited about it and it's not fresh and unique to me, then it's going to come across stale and old to you, and that's not what I want. So in order for me to feel like it's fresh and new, we're going to have to change the background. We're going to have to do something, change locations here in the church, do something to revamp it so that it feels fresh and new again to me, so that it comes across that way to you. And that's very important to me. So we're going to keep rolling, so please keep tuning in. My hope is that we're going to do this through the month of October, and maybe into November, because we're working on some things here at the church, to go live just with my sermons. I'm talking about real-time live, not with our music, but with my preaching. And if we can do this until then, and then transition immediately into live, get all the bugs worked out and all that, and just transition from a pre-recorded service like we're doing now to a live thing, I think that'd be the best thing to do. So we're going to do that. That's what I feel good about. That's what I feel comfortable about. And so I'm sold on that. So we're going to roll in that. We're going to go in that direction. So be praying for us as we try to get all that stuff together. I'd appreciate that. Also, don't forget that a week from today, kids ministry starts here at Fam Church. We're still continuing to roll. We don't see any problems in the school systems. Everything seems to be working well. That was going to be our barometer. I mean, that was going to be what we were looking at. So it seems like everything's working well in the schools. And we don't have any explosions of COVID-19 so far. So thank God for that. So that gives us a little bit of encouragement and confidence that we're not going to have it here. So a week from today, we're going to start back kids ministry. That includes the nursery. So all of you fine folks who have been waiting to get back to church, especially with toddlers, hey, looking forward to seeing you. It's going to be great. For the rest of you who are still not sure about and you still don't feel safe, I get it. Know that you're in my thoughts and you're in my prayers, and I'm hoping against hope that we'll get beyond this thing as soon as possible and, get back to something that resembles normal. But you got to take care of yourself and you got to take care of your loved ones, and I get that. So thanks for the support. Thanks for giving. Thanks for doing all that you do to help support this ministry here. I'm grateful, and I'm eternally grateful. So thank you for that. Okay, now that the house cleaning matters are out of the way and you know where we're moving forward to, let's change gears, shall we? Get into this week's message. Well, if you'll recall, we started out with Amos and Hosea. I could have given you more, but I decided not to. I figured, 2 prophets is enough of warnings. So that's what they were doing. They were warning, if you'll remember. They were warning God's people. You better get right. If you don't, then what's going to happen is God's going to come to judge you. Of course, nobody wanted to listen to that. Nobody thought God was going to do it. Then we spent 2 weeks out of Ezekiel and Jeremiah chronicling, oh, yes, he did. And, of course, we saw in vivid detail that God did come and judge his people. Why? Because they refused to listen. Today and next week, we're going to talk about what happens after it all falls apart. What happens after it all falls apart? I'm sure you've had instances in your life. I've had instances in my life where it felt like it's just come apart. What do you do when it comes apart? And we can learn something from the prophets of old, because they were given the challenge, the role, the responsibility to speak into the lives of people. Now, I hope to God that we're not going to have to speak into our culture this way. I hope to God our culture doesn't come off the rails. If you've ever prayed for America, son, we need to be praying now. I hope to God it doesn't come off the rails. But if it does, we need to know that God's got something, got a word to speak into the middle of a situation that's come completely apart. Regardless if it's in our culture and our personal lives, we need to know that God has a word of restoration. You need to hear me in this. If God is anything, he is a God of mercy and of grace. And even after there's judgment, even after it falls apart, right? God is the sort of God. This is why I love him so desperately and so vehemently. I thank God that he's the kind of God that even though he tells you, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to bring judgment. And when you don't straighten up, and he does bring judgment, even after that, he still loves us and he wants to restore us. And he's in the business of restoration. And that's what's so remarkable about the things of God. He's in the business of fixing you up when it all breaks down, right? And so I thank God for that. And so we're going to talk about some of those things today. Restoration. God is in the business of restoring. Now what he's done is, if I can take just a moment of your time to set this up. Remember, you had God's chosen people. They were in Israel. The prophets came, warned them. God's going to bring judgment. He's going to bring a foreign nation in here to judge you. They refused to believe that. You know and I know. We can read the biblical account of what happened. The Babylonians came, made war against Israel, broke them down, took them off into exile. There they were. And now all of a sudden, they finally, after 75 years from the very early warnings, 75 years later, after Jerusalem had been destroyed, after all of the churches, well, the synagogues at that point, the temple, all those things have been broken down. All of that, they've been hauled off into exile. Everything that they'd ever hoped and dreamed was absolutely demolished and destroyed. Finally, after 75 years, after those initial warnings, they're given a chance to come back and start all over. They're given an opportunity to put the pieces all back together. After it all has been broken down, they finally get a chance to fix it. God's going to be in the middle of it. Well, God is raising up people, and the person that we're talking about today is Zechariah. Zechariah is one of the people that God chose and rose him up. He was a priest. Now, this is a unique spin on what's been going on. Most of the time it's been shepherds and folks like that. No, this time it's a priest. So now we got Zechariah. He's a priest and a prophet. Okay, so this guy, he's no slouch. I mean, he's legit, right? And so he's already a priest. He's from a priestly family. And God raises him up. And not only is he a priest, but he's also a prophet. God speaking and putting words into his mouth. And Zechariah is tasked with encouraging the people, constantly encouraging them, rebuking them, trying to get them motivated to continue the work that they've been called to. Because you got to understand, when it all falls apart and you got to put everything back together, listen to me, my friends and my neighbors, you know this to be true. When it's time to put things back together, listen, that's work. I mean, have you done any kind of restoration projects at all? They're work, aren't they? Listen, I've done all sorts, I've done all sorts of restoration projects. And I can tell you this from experience. When you get into restoration projects, it takes more time than you ever thought. Y'all know that to be true. And it takes more money than you ever thought. When you're restoring things, it takes more time. Someone comes to you and says, we can build this building in 6 months. Listen to me. Try a year and 6 months, okay? That's just the way this thing goes. Someone comes to you and says, I can build that building for you. I can come in and do this project for $50,000. Listen to me. It's going to cost $100,000. It takes longer than you ever thought, and it takes more money than you ever thought. That's the business of restoration. And so, if you've ever been in a project of restoring something, there comes a point as you're restoring it where you just get so frustrated that you just want to give up. I mean, you get in the middle of it and you're like, is this ever going to get done? Or you get in the middle of it and you're like, I am so sick of spending money on this. It's $1 here and $1 there and $5 over there and $100 here and $1,000 there. And before long, man, you run out of energy. Well, I mean, the same thing took place back then. Pardon me. The same thing happened back then. They were in the middle of this project. They were getting discouraged. And they needed God's help. They needed God's word. So God rose up this guy named Zechariah to speak to them, to encourage them, to motivate them, to keep going. Keep going. Don't. When everything's falling apart and you got to put it back together, it takes a while. And so my encouragement to you is hang in there. It's the same word. It's the same encouragement. It's the same motivation. Hang in there. It takes a while sometimes, don't it? Y'all know this to be the case. Some of you are dealing with physical problems. And you want God to come down and zap you immediately. Get this over with and done with. It doesn't work that way. It takes a while sometimes. Sometimes it's not always instantaneous. Sometimes your deliverance doesn't happen just all of a sudden. Sometimes it's gradual. Sometimes, you got to take time. This is what's going on here. And this is what we do. I know my wife and I, we love to drive down country roads, and we get out on these country roads and we're riding, and man, I'll see an old house, that's been deserted. And I look and I think, man, that's an awesome place. It's just the historical significance of it really motivates me on the inside. I want to take a project like that, right? And I want to restore it. And I want to work at it. And I'll nudge my wife and I'll say, check that house out. We ought to get that and restore it. And she looks at me and she says, are you nuts? Are you nuts? We're not getting that. It's going to take way too much money. It's going to take way too much time. Why would we do that? And I get it. But look, some things are worth it. A house out in the country that's been deserted may not be worth it. But I'm going to tell you what, you're worth it. I'm worth it. And so I thank God when the Lord looks at us, you know, He doesn't look at us something that needs to be restored and refreshed and renewed. The Lord doesn't look at us and say, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. Look at it. It's decrepit. It's going to take a lot of time, right? And it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to be very expensive. You know, God looks at that and says, you know what? It may take a while. But the good work that I'm starting in him, the good work that I'm starting in her, I'm going to bring it to completion. I'm going to work at it. I'm going to take some time and I'm going to do it. And I know it's expensive. I can hear God saying now, I know it's expensive. It's expensive to restore someone. It's so expensive it cost me my only son. But it's worth it. You're worth it. Hear me in this. Your life may be coming completely apart, but you need to listen to me. You need to hear this. This is right out of the heart of God. You're worth it. The restoration process that you're under, you're well worth it. Jesus came, was crucified on a cross, raised from the dead. The death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. You're worth it. You're absolutely worth it. And God's got a work going on. He is fixing you up. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. He's restoring you, and I thank God for that. And the Lord is working through these things to restore. And yes, that process takes a while. And yes, it's expensive, but it's worth it. Listen, I've been in pastoral ministry a while now. I've led 3 churches through building and renovations, including the one that I'm in right now. And they're expensive, and they take a long time, and they require a lot of energy. Because this is, you know, it's not just what Zechariah was involved in here. It's just not just his own personal family. No, it's the whole nation of Israel. This guy's got a lot of responsibility on his back. And the bottom line is that when you're in the middle of a restoration and you're leading people, it's taxing. There's a lot of energy that's used up in the middle of that. It takes a while. And when you're trying to keep everybody on the same page, moving in the same direction, constantly encouraging them, constantly trying to motivate them, constantly letting them know that it's going to be all right, and keeping everybody on the same page and moving in the same direction, it is taxing. It's a lot of work. So much so that statistically, when pastors get done with building projects, 85% of them leave their church within the first year. After the completion of the building project, they're done. They're spent. They can't take anymore. And so they leave. They need a break. So unfortunately, they leave the church. They probably left out a season, but they can't take it because it requires so much energy and so much work. But I'm here to tell you, the reason why we're taxed is because we're human and we wear out. But I'm here to tell you, man, we serve a God who doesn't get worn out. He's not taxed. He doesn't get frustrated and bail on us. God is a good God who's working behind the scenes to restore you and I back to where we need to be. And He's not going to give up on us. If He started a good work in us, He's going to finish that good work in us. And I'm convinced of that. If I weren't, I would not be here today giving this word to you. I'm convinced that God is using the words in the ministry of Zechariah from thousands of years ago to encourage you and I today, to let you know and lets me know that God is not going to give up on this work. He's in the restoration business. And so God speaks through Zechariah multiple times. As a matter of fact, in the scriptures, in the book of Zechariah, God gives Zechariah, check this out, 8 visions. 8 visions. Interestingly enough, they're at night. They're at night. Now, listen, I don't have time in this short broadcast to go through every one of those visions that Zechariah receives at night. I mean, truly, each one of them would probably be worth, a week's worth of material. So what we could really turn Zechariah into an 8-week sermon series. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to share with you real quick some of these visions that he's got. or that he received all those years ago, okay? So, for example, again, pardon the specs, but my eyes are going away as I age. God gives Zechariah these 8 visions at night. Here's some of them. A man amongst some myrtle trees. He gives Zechariah a vision of 4 horns and 4 craftsmen, people who work with stones and things like that. A surveyor and a measuring line. There's a whole vision on that. There's a whole vision on the crowning of a new high priest. There's also a vision of a golden lampstand and 2 olive trees. There's a vision that Zechariah receives of a flying scroll, what they used to write on, a flying scroll. Then the 7th vision that Zechariah receives is a vision of a woman in a basket. And then the 8th vision at night that Zechariah gets is about 4 chariots. Now again, I don't have the time to go through all 8 of those visions. But listen to me. Every one of them, all 8, are designed around and are predicated upon the fact that the Lord God is in the business of being sovereign over everything that he does. Listen, he is sovereign over the past, he is sovereign over the present, and he is sovereign over the future. If you don't think God's got this figured out, you need to think again. The Lord is actively involved. Yes, my friends and my neighbors, even right now, to restore unto you those things that need to be restored. He's in the business of fixing you up. And I'm here to tell you, that's what God specializes in. Yes, you may have been made mistakes. Yes, you may be physically impaired right now. But God is actively involved and working behind the scenes to restore you. This is what God does. And he is working all over the place. He's over the history, over all men, over all nations. He's over you and I, and he's working constantly to bring about our good. Now you say, Pastor John, it doesn't feel like that good's coming my way. And here's the thing that you need to know. Good's coming your way. When does it get here? I don't know. You look at some people's lives and it seems like they get restored before they go to heaven. But then you look at other people and they live hard, difficult lives that just, boy, I tell you, I see some people and I think, my God, their cross to bear is a big one. And I got to be careful as a pastor because I can't tell you that you're never going to experience all this suffering and stuff. Listen, there are trials and sufferings that everybody goes through. It's part of it. I cannot tell you that you're going to live a life that everybody's watching is going to live to be 100 or more. That you're never going to have any problems. That you're going to have a bank full of money, and that everything's going to be glorious. And you're gonna die in your sleep on your 100th birthday, and there's gonna be no problems, and you're just gonna come out of this life and go into the next one, and it's just gonna be easy peasy all the way through. I can't tell you that because that's not true. That's fantasy land. Most people suffer at some point in their life. They go through it. And if I tell people that they're never going to go through it and give them this false impression that life is going to be perfect for them and that they're never going to suffer and they're never going to be sick and you're going to live to be 100 and you're going to have plenty of money and you're just going to be all this stuff. And then when reality sets in, you're going to be thinking, well, where's God at? What's going on here? Lord, don't you love me? Don't you care about me, God? So you need to be prepared, right? That not everybody gets it easy. It's tough on some people. And your restoration may not happen now in the natural. Your restoration may happen in the next life when you get to heaven. Because that's our goal. That's our hope. And so there's a scripture verse that's going to be put on. It's the verse out of Zechariah. It's Zechariah 14:4. And it talks about the second coming of Jesus, not the rapture. Okay, the rapture is when we're called up to meet the Lord in the air. Now I'm talking about the second coming, the actual event when Jesus comes back and his feet actually touch the earth again. When Jesus comes back at the second coming, everything is going to be made right. Up until then, all hell may be breaking loose. Until then, you're probably going to be sick, broke, troubled, and everything else. There's going to be occasions where you are going to walk in victory on this earth. There's going to be occasions when you don't. But regardless if you walk in victory or don't walk in victory, regardless if you suffer some or don't suffer or suffer lots or whatever, ultimately, none of it's going to be restored until it's all restored. And when Jesus comes back to the earth, and he splits the eastern sky and he comes on down here and he puts his feet on the Mount of Olives and he's back on this earth once again, it'll be restored. And on that day, there's going to be some rejoicing. Because everybody's going to know that Jesus is who he says he is. And we hope and we hold out hope for that day. And so you listen to me. Those of you who are suffering, those of you who are in a bind today, those of you who you feel like your world's coming apart, you listen to me. You understand this. God's in the restoration business, and he's restoring you. This is what he does. This is what he's very, very good at. And so listen, you take heart today. You take heart. God's got you, and he's going to see you through. He's in the restoration business. Yeah, you may have made some bad decisions that's led you to where you're at. That's all right. God's going to turn around all that madness for good. That's what he's good at. So you hang in there because God's got you back and he's working behind the scenes to turn your mess into a bless. I believe that. I believe that with all of my heart. So be encouraged, my friends and neighbors. The Lord loves you, and I do too. You hang in there. God's redemption and restoration power is on the way. God bless you, and so long.